somewhere and have the college fire me because it's I have something to pass around that this is a photograph of what we wrote on the board in terms of the topics we need to discuss, and this is your sign up. You signed up, put your initials by stuff, and I have dropped those topics in a calendar for the next few weeks that take us into the last of September. And there's a couple of things to note on this calendar. And I have the initials of who signed up for who and what day your topic. And if I got them or misunderstood, now's the time to fix it. And Annalise, I got you down for 3 things.
Yeah.
And I think that they just loaded you up. You know, it wasn't fair. So they're all on the calendar with an understanding. Pick out the one you want to do. And there's a couple of other topics that are on here that I haven't dropped in that will be the end of September. This class goes to about the middle of October. So I don't remember the exact date. I didn't put, well, I've got October's on here, but I didn't keep filling out topics. So class, I think October 16th is the last date, 24 classes. The 24th class is on the 16th. So then the 18th we start our next topic. So I think that's the way this will run. But there's a couple of, Labor Day is a holiday as you would expect on Monday, September the 4th. That's in a few weeks. The week before that, on August the 28th. So 2 weeks from Monday, August the 28th, we have a class, but it won't be a class in person. It'll be an online assignment regarding HAZCOM. So you'll kind of have the day off. You'll need to watch it, but you don't have to watch it during the hours. Mm-hmm. You can just sometime get that, and that assignment will be an online assignment. So it's noted here, and I'm telling you about it so you can kind of plan accordingly. You kind of have, from school perspective, a couple of 3-day weekends. Sweet. Yeah, so that's not a bad thing. I'm going to pass this around along with the sign-up list. So if there's another topic that nobody signed up for that you want to switch out for, go for it. It's fine. Just make the notes on this calendar. Get the calendar back to me. Take a picture of it if you want so you remember the dates and so forth. If you want to get even with Tino now, we can put him down for a bunch of stuff if you want to do that. So that's coming around. Today's topic. Yes?
A question about the topics that each of us will be talking about. Is it a certain amount of time? Like
no.
an hour?
There is a time requirement that OSHA says we have to spend on it as a class. That's my problem, not yours. So for each of your topics, 20 or 30 minute presentation on the topic. If you've got, if you're doing PPE and you bring in, safety glasses and steel-toed shoes and we stomp on them or do some activity together, that's fun, that's fine. You find a video, play the video, have a little game you want to play, that's fine. Or you want to put a PowerPoint together. There's a lot of free stuff you don't have to invent on all these topics because everybody has to teach the same topic. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Feel free to steal it. It's not a copyright violation if we take stuff off the internet and use it for classroom teaching purposes. It is a problem if we sell it. Mm-hmm. So copyrights, you can't violate a copyright and earn money for you on somebody else's work. But in our classroom, to share something that somebody else wrote or sung or whatever that's protected from them, we're fine to do that without violating licenses. We simply can't sell it. So okay. we won't plan on doing the selling part of it at all. YouTube doesn't take any chances on that. If there's anything that I publish up on YouTube, they screen every video that I put up prior to them accepting it and posting it to make sure that it doesn't violate a copyright in their library. And if it does, even though we're not selling our videos, it's just a classroom reporting, they err on the part of a conservative, and they just will block it out on the video. They won't cancel the whole video. They'll just block out the section they think was in copyright violation, which I've had a few. I had one, we had music going in the background.
Oh, yes.
And YouTube picked up, it was off of somebody's cell phone. It was just in the room. They picked it up, and I go, what? I don't think I violated. And I went and looked at it and listened to it. And I go, I see what happened. Yeah. And rightfully so. That's, they err in that direction. Although then they throw porn up. It's like I don't figure out the ethics of what they're all doing. But anyway.
So essentially, we're just coming up with an introduction to the subject.
Yeah, telling us something
20 minutes.
Yeah. Something telling us what you think that OSHA might want us to know, what you think we ought to know, and it can be literally however you see and want to do it. It's not that I'm going to. Did you teach me what it was? Did you teach me, what the OSHA law is on it? You don't have to do any of that.
Okay.
Just expose us to what the issue could be from your common sense perspective. Tripping and falling, fall protection. If that's it, there's some rules that we could think, but then there's some other stuff that you don't think of. Like, if I got a rope and I'm on a ladder way up high and I fall, you don't realize that if my rope's not the right length, I'll break my neck. And you go, oh, I was tied off. What happened? Well, I was tied off with the wrong thing. So that's an interesting thing to say, do the math. Figure out exactly how far you can fall without snapping your neck if the arresting device catches you. So you're dead either way. You might as well just hit the ground. Don't even worry about it. Easier to clean up after that way. They got to get you off a rope on the end of off an eye somewhere. They got to shoot you down from there. It's harder. Let you just hit the ground if you're going to be stupid. So take your own approach on that. And then for most of the topics, I'll be adding to the topic based on what I know that OSHA needs us to cover. If you cover that, that's great. We won't do it twice. If you don't, that's not a foul. No problem. No points off. The only points off is if you don't do it. Mm-hmm. So it's a checkbox. You need to do the presentation, and I know you all do good stuff, and so it's the experience of participating and doing what you don't want to do, which I get that, but that's part of what we're developing our skill sets, right? And that's kind of what we really want to do with that. Today we are going to start the topic on emergency response, and we are going to introduce ourselves to the Emergency Response Guidebook through the PowerPoint and a whole bunch of video clips that we will watch. We'll look at some of the primary topics. I have copies of some books. Let me put this down so I don't hang myself with the rope. I have on order a copy of this for everybody. So a hard copy. But before we go to the hard copy, I'm going to pass that around. Before we talk about it that much in class, I would like you to go to the Play Store for iOS or for Android, depending on what your flavor is, if you have a phone with you, and I want you to look up ERG 2020. And the ERG 2020 is a free app that puts this book on your phone in an app format for Android or for iOS. And then it looks, the logo that you will see looks like this right here, these placards in orange background. That's what it looks like on your phone. I put it on my home, so when it comes up, it comes up like this, and you can punch in numbers and see what the material is for the truck that just passed you on the highway without looking it up in this book. Cool. But all the same information that's in the book is on the phone app version. I still want you to have a hard copy, and I bought them. They're momentarily back ordered. They come from the United States Government Printing Office, which
that would be way back ordered.
They go, well, I suppose they're printing tax returns right now, or tax forms.
Or money.
I don't know what they're printing, but they're not printing these right this second. But you will see that these come out basically every 4 years. I have a 2008 version here, a 2012 version, and I have 3 copies of the 2016 that I found on my bookshelf. at home. The 2020 is the current one, and that's what you'll be downloading, and that's what you'll get a copy of. But I'm going to just kind of pass these around. Well, you can kind of peruse. What's that?
The mini one is one.
You like this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, I guess maybe I'll just leave them all together. Just pass them as 5. You can look at them, and that's kind of ridiculous how I'm passing them around. I don't know what's a better way is to do it. Tina's got here, so we're going to sign you up for something.
Oh, no.
We decided, they had your back though. They weren't going to let me do that. I'm sending around a paper of what we're presenting and what day we're presenting your topic. So it'll come back up to you. These are my copies of the books just because we're going to talk about the books. We have a website for you to go to the Play Store for iOS or for Android and download. We're looking for...
We're looking at them, or are we going to have a copy during this course?
We're looking at them.
We're looking at
And
them?
he's got copies on order.
I've got copies on order that could arrive any day. They've been on order for over a month at this point.
Okay.
These are all
I paid for them. These are just obsolete ones that I have on my bookshelf to show you what they're
You've read
very...
all of this?
What's that?
You've read all of this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Yeah. I was
Every
like-
number.
Because I'm into that stuff, and everybody else says you don't have to be.
He's like page 120.
We're looking for the app in your Play Store or iOS for ERG 2020. And if you look that up and download that app will have a logo that has these 4 placards on it with orange behind it. That will show you that's the correct one. And it's free. No ads. It's done by the federal government. They want us to know about response and emergency response. So while you are looking at those books, feel free. We're not in a rush. Just by the end of class, make their way back to me for my historical museum, and you will get current copies of the new one as soon as it arrives in my mailbox. Notice a couple of logos on here. We are going to look at, in our videos, we're going to look at 2020, and by the way, the obvious thing is 2024 is going to press in a few months. So the 2020 version that you get will be obsoleted sometime by spring of 2024. However, much of it's going to be the same. If you look from the 2008 to current, there's a few chemicals that have changed, a few pages added, a little bit of information here or there, but it's enough that if you're an emergency responder, we do want to be reacting to the most current information because we keep getting knowledge from when people die. And sometimes that knowledge says that, well, guess what? That 50-foot spacing that we said you needed isn't enough. You need 200 feet. And so they'll update it with something like that we've learned the hard way. So we want to use current information when we can. But if we don't have anything like that available and we've got an emergency, use an old book. It's going to give you better information as to what to do. Like, we've asked the question before when we were talking about SDSs. Do you induce vomiting or do you avoid vomiting? Well, this book is one of the places where it tells you. And it tells you without having to call the doctor and go to the hospital or check with poison control. It's got the data right here. We can look it up for a specific chemical that we might have been exposed to. So on this slide, we have the cover of the 2020 book. We also have a logo that I put over here. Anybody have a guess as to what this logo is?
It's an acronym?
It is an acronym, but I don't even know exactly without thinking real hard what the acronym is. It's in one of your books. It'll be in the book. It's Canada. And this is the emergency response system in Canada that makes this book in its total. So we see Transport Canada that they put in French and English, the U.S. Department of Transportation there. And so this book is designed to be universal to North America. We don't include Central America at the moment because of really political and treaty reasons, not because the gas is different or the dangers or hazards are different. It's just that we've pooled our money together in Canada and the United States in order to join a hotline so that you don't have to think about who you're dialing. You just dial the number on the back cover of that book or the back inside cover or the front inside cover. There are phone numbers there that give you a quick reference to somebody you can dial 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that will answer a phone and help you out if we've got an emergency of some sort. Emergency responders are all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of requirements, and all kinds of things that we do for a living. You may not have ever considered yourself an emergency responder, and in many ways we're not trained to the depth that we'd want to be if that was our full-time job. But the reality of it is, if we are the first ones that come across a chemical spill in aisle 13 at Walmart, we are an emergency responder. We're the first one there. And we have the option of making a decision and trying to make that a safer incident, whatever kind of incident it is. That's not our job. Walmart's not paying us to do that. In fact, Walmart, really, their lawyers may prefer that we didn't get involved. But from a human ethics point of view, the emergency response system in the United States is set up so that the first person at an incident is, by default, the incident commander. And you are in charge because you were there first, until someone shows up that has more training than you do and asks for the baton of incident command. So the incident commander may change 5-6 times based on who responds to an incident. And by incident, we have an emergency when the Virgin River floods. When it just rains too much and comes down from Zion. We have flooding conditions that get into wells and repositories and ditches where bad chemicals can exist. And now all of a sudden they're getting picked up in the flood and then washed into the river downstream. And now we got fish dying because of what they ran through the water ran through a farmer's barn and picked up chemicals in an old barrel that was sitting back there. They don't even remember who bought the barrel. You know, it's just been their granddaddy bought the barrel.
Back when you could just walk in the hardware and buy a barrel of
exactly
whatever,
you know, and so things haven't been always under the same control. And when we have an incident, when we have a car wreck, what's in that car wreck? When Bang Concrete here in town had a truck drop off over in Laverkin into Ash Creek there, a concrete pump truck. They had 300 gallons of diesel fuel spilling into Ash Creek River, plus whatever oil was in it, plus whatever other things were in that truck. They have release agent and all kinds of things that help facilitate the process of pumping concrete, and that's all spilling into the river. So we have an emergency, right? And emergency responder, the first one there probably was the dude on the land that looks at the truck down there and goes, "Holy cow! I hope nobody's in that," you know. And so we may find ourselves in a situation where we are the emergency responder. I had a traffic accident many years ago. I had a brand new 1978 Buick Regal. Ooh, it's a nice car for a kid to have, right? And I was in college doing side jobs over my regular job, and one of the side jobs I did was I was pretty good at blowing up balloons, which sounds kind of crazy, but I blew up balloons.
That pays for your Regal?
Yeah, it paid. You get paid 10 cents a balloon for tying knots in balloons, wow. And I could do 4,000 or 5,000 on a Saturday. It was a nice little side gig for a college kid. So I got a helium tank in the trunk of this Buick Regal, And it's 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I'm south of Chicago someplace, driving to an event where they wanted a enormous number of balloons blown up, and a guy came across the lanes of traffic and sideswiped me, front to rear on the car. But when he got to the trunk area of the car, that cylinder was the width of the car, and he's shaving off the side of my car, and he gets to the cylinder, he shaves off the valve, and the cylinder exits the other side of the car in the trunk, and so the emergency. There was a cop that saw it happen. He wasn't behind me, but he saw it happen, and he saw the cylinder shoot out, and it hit a building, but he didn't know what was in the cylinder. It was helium.
What are you making in here, kid?
Yeah, really, I didn't know. I didn't know what, and so honestly, emergency responders had to come and figure out what was in that cylinder. Even though when he asked me, I said it's helium. It could have been a meth lab supply, right? Just as easily as a kid's birthday party with balloons, and so we had a situation on the south side of Chicago at that point in time. And what gave me the evidence that we had a situation is the cops that did respond had an argument at that point as to whose jurisdiction it was, because none of them wanted to write it up. That happened there. Well, that's county. No, that's city. That's Calumet City. They literally had an argument over who had to write up the hazardous incident that occurred because the cylinder discharged and flew across the street. So we may find ourselves emergency responders, even just for a minute. And the more knowledge we have, the more equipped we are, the better we can respond. Now, in HAZWOPER, which is an acronym for Hazardous Waste Operations personnel, responders, like those would be the people that work at the city dump. Those would be the people who work at landfills of various types. People that work at decontamination facilities that officially are wound up to do waste operations that could be dangerous. But in HAZWOPER, we are in many cases the employer is required to have personnel with HAZWOPER training. The fire departments of all cities are required to have people on the fire department, even volunteer fire departments that have HAZWOPER training, because some of the incidents that we would be responding to would just be in our neighborhood, just be in the community. A wreck that occurs, a train gets derailed in different places besides St. George, and we have a mining incident. Something collapses. We just have community emergencies of all kinds: a hurricane, a tornado, a flash flood. Electricity starts a fire. There's a fire right now between here and Salt Lake, right, somewhere in a BLM, and what's it burning? It's burning. It's threatening a fiber optic line that comes to St. George, among other things. You get a forest fire near a fiber optic line, you can
run.
No. Yeah. Download your stuff, right?
Be on the internet for a while. That'd be a disaster.
I don't know if it's an imminent threat. I kind of don't think it is, but it could be. Tino, did you see that? Yeah. So we're talking about HAZWOPER from a general perspective. If we are an employer and we have over so many gallons of different types of listed chemicals, we might be a hazardous, considered to be a hazardous facility. Our facility in Building B, depending on the time, from time to time, we have enough solvent in the automotive collision where we paint cars and paint trucks and things like that. Those chemicals are on a fire department's list of saying you have obligations there to manage those and to keep hazardous spills from occurring at your place of business. And if they do occur, it's your responsibility to have people trained to know what to do. And how do you do a cleanup? How don't you do a cleanup? How do you do it safely for the chemicals that you have on hand? So all of us will have potentially a time in our management careers where we may have a responsibility for these kinds of things that we're talking about. And as everyday citizens, we also have the responsibility. We're going to look at a police department, for starters, 30 or 40 years ago, of how they would respond to a hazardous situation in a routine traffic stop with a cop and a semi-truck. So we're going to watch a little video of that, talk about it for a minute, and then we are going to update a little bit to a little bit more modern set of rules of some stuff that could be done in that situation.
Trailer. I'll be darned. I don't take care of a good day.
Yeah, what are you carrying?
I got some paint and some sulfuric acid on there.
Let me see your driver's license. Where you coming from?
Coming out of Philadelphia. Is that
Let's
okay?
go back here and take a look at it. See what we got. Fumes that come out there.
Sulfuric acid.
Have a seat. Have a seat. I'll get rescued. Scout 830. Scout 830. Scout 830. Have a tractor trailer truck stopped at Route 50 in West Ox. It's going to be carrying chemical fumes coming out of the rear. I'm going to need fire and rescue. The driver is injured. Driver is injured. How you feeling now? Feeling a little better? You getting a little more air? Looks like those things are in pretty bad shape there.
Yeah.
Who packed those things?
Ship it out.
Okay, look, here they come. I'm going to go meet with them and explain to them a little bit about what's going on, okay?
Right.
You just stay right here.
Okay.
Try not to breathe. Stay
Right.
calm, okay?
Yeah.
Just hang tight, okay? You got a gentleman right over here. I don't know what the heck he's got in here. He said something about sulfuric acid or something like that. You guys are going to need medical attention over there. I'll try to get some more traffic, okay? It's right over there. Scout 830. I'm going to need 2 additional units for traffic, one at West Ox Road and one at Route 50. I'm going to have to block off traffic. Got rescue on the way, on the scene.
So, they did stuff from a long time ago, kind of the way they were trained to do it at the time. But what were some of the things you noticed as we looked at that rather short video clip that just didn't look right?
The officer didn't avoid the chemical, and neither did the first responders.
Yeah, they pulled right into it, didn't they?
They opened the truck when they should have called the right responders for the truck to be even opened.
Yep. He asked for paperwork, but he didn't look at it, right? What about...
I think it was parked too close. That thing, like...
he was parked real close,
Yeah.
wasn't he?
I mean, it could have been chemicals that could have exploded, and
Yeah.
you're right there,
And then the ambulance drove right into it, right up even closer, you know?
Yeah.
Right there like that.
The ambulance has a diesel, which means it could have had a runaway engine.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very, very true. And they talk about sulfuric acid as being the known chemical on board. Is sulfuric acid a powder? Rarely. I mean, anything can be, you know.
Does it come from batteries?
Yeah, it's a battery acid. That's a diluted sulfuric acid.
So you don't think that was sulfuric acid?
I don't think that was sulfuric acid. I think he had something else on board. I mean, I think he had sulfuric acid too.
Yeah.
Because there was a liquid running out. Yeah. And notice they didn't even talk about the liquid anymore or look for it. That was why he got stopped. Was there was liquid coming out the doors, and then they open the door and powder comes out, and overtakes the driver. They leave the door open.
Yeah.
Now the powder's mixing with the liquid, and who even knows?
It might be a bomb.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time that gets done mixing, yeah, we don't know. They didn't know, and so we've learned a lot since that period of time that seems to be good common sense to all of us, and most of us haven't had formal training on something like that, how to respond to it. It just seems to make more common sense now because of a general awareness of things can go wrong, and we have an understanding and idea of that. That semi truck, at least the trailer, was a reefer trailer. I mean, evidenced by the trap door on the back door there, you know, a test door where you run temperatures and things to see what your load is at. So I don't know if it was operating as a reefer or not at that moment. That back door was open, the hatch, whatever, that's not the right term for it, but the small access was open, and a cop today would investigate why that was and what's going on. Was it a reefer that was just being operated as a dry van at that point?
What's a reefer?
Refrigerated truck.
Oh.
Yeah. So if it was supposed to be operating as a refrigerated truck, which sometimes it can be, you know, we ship ice cream that way, it can be frozen. Mm-hmm. And some chemicals are required to be cold, at temperature controlled, cold. And, you know, we don't know if that got violated either. It could be that thing all warmed up, heated up, and made it a much more dangerous situation. We know the officer didn't know. Mm-hmm. And the officer probably wasn't a graduate chemist. We wouldn't expect him to know. None of us are experts at everything. So the training is to reach out and find what we need to know to make that as safe a situation as we can. Yes?
How would you know if a chemical needs to be transported with a refrigerator?
That orange book right in front of you is going to tell you.
Really?
Yeah, it will. It will tell you transportation, like if there's a risk of polymerization with the chemical that's on a bill of a manifest, a bill of lading, then that would tell us that we could have a runaway situation if it's not under control. We need to be, you know, we're just rookies, you know, looking at it for our first time. We don't know what to look at or what to look for yet. We'll learn some of that in class today, but that information is right there at our fingertips. And the police officers they have this book in their car, and they are trained in how to use this book. Most of them are certified emergency responders, in addition to being peace officers, and so it's part of their training that's how they keep us safe from, you know, threats of violence or threats of disaster, like, you know, chemical or something like that. So let's look at another version of this. It's still old. They're driving the kind of car that only the tweakers drive today, you know, and so it's still not brand new, but they've implemented some better training. So let's take a look at some of the things they pick up and do differently than they did on that first time through. And the HAZWOPER.
Let's look at this incident again, keeping the rules for safety in mind.
Let's go on. Yeah, there's a fluid leaking out of the rear trail.
Yeah, what are we doing?
What came back there?
I got some sulfuric acid and some paint.
Could I look at your papers, and we'll need to see driver's license and registration also. Where you coming from?
Coming out of Philadelphia.
When's the last time you made a stop?
The rest area, had to take a short break.
Did you notice anything leaking at that time? No.
Okay then.
Alright. Alright, we definitely got something leaking out of it right now.
All right, let's go take a look at it.
Well, why don't you stay here, and I'll make some checks, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
staying there.
This time, the officer has obtained information about the truck's load. When the driver becomes contaminated, the officer is prepared.
Scout 830.
Scout 830.
Scout 830, the vehicle I've stopped contains several hazardous materials. The driver has been contaminated and fumes are being released. I'm going to need rescue dispatch and 2 additional units for traffic.
Scout 830, 4850 will be dispatched. Fire rescue has been notified. 1550.
10-4, advise them to approach from the south end. Also, advise them to be ready to copy for shipping materials.
Stand by 187. Scout 830, go ahead with your traffic.
Scout 830, advise Chemtrack the materials are paint, which is UN 1263. That's Uniform November 1263. Sulfuric acid, which is a corrosive material, UN 1830. That's Uniform November 1830. Last materials are agricultural fungicide.
Using the shipping papers, the police officer is able to provide information to his dispatcher, which will give the necessary information to Chemtrack to provide assistance.
Papers off of it. You think you can, but if you don't throw one bell, so
Also, if you can, we'd like you to start stopping traffic up here about a quarter mile back or so. Okay, Sam, why don't we go ahead and get suited up?
The officer was able to use the shipping papers to provide valuable and accurate on-the-scene information to his dispatcher and to the ambulance crew.
What happened? Okay, you got an acid on you? No, your brain's come on. Don't rub it. Are you doing okay? Yeah, I got a couple for you. All right, could you lay down for me?
The patient is stable, and until further information is available, the ambulance crew is following safe procedure. Another situation under control. The ambulance crew is safe. The patient is getting appropriate treatment. The slight delay in actually beginning care is important to ensure the safety of all concerned. Further caution will be taken to avoid contaminating the ambulance during transport. The hospital will be notified, and if necessary, the decontamination protocol will be used in handling the patient and ensuring that the ambulance has been properly cleaned before going back in service. The victim may be washed down at the scene prior to transport in order to reduce the effect of the hazardous material on him and to help prevent contamination of others. The 5 safety rules were key to proper handling of this incident. First responders protected themselves and approached the incident properly. The hazards were properly identified. The scene was secured. Further information and assistance was obtained. And the first responders avoided contact with any hazardous materials.
So if you've downloaded the app, you could look up that UN 1830 that they just said it was placarded as, and you would see that your phone bumps you to an orange bordered section. And we're going to look and see in this, these books are all printed the expensive way on colored material, on colored paper, and they're printed in color. And there's a yellow section that has things by number, in order by number. There's a blue section that has the same things but listed alphabetical. So if you knew it was sulfuric acid, you use the blue section to look up S. If you knew it was 1830, you'd use the yellow section. And in both cases, you're looking for a pointer reference to an orange section. And the orange section is a 2-page guide, and it's numbered. And the guide that the sulfuric acid and a bunch of other similar chemicals point us to is guide 137. So 137, we look up 1830, UN 1830, it says it's sulfuric acid, it says go to guide 137. So guide 137 is the orange page, which gives now the information we need to know in sections. The potential hazards for health, for fire and explosion, public safety, who to call, protective coating, evacuation. Tells you, like for example, if something is on fire, you need to be 800 meters away. Tells you that right here. That's half a mile. That's pretty far away. Then it gives you emergency response, what to do, if there's a spill or a leak, what to do, if it's wet or dry, and first aid, if somebody's exposed, what do you do? And that's all in the orange pages. So because a lot of chemicals are similar, they don't need to repeat that same information for every hundreds of chemicals in here. So they have the hundreds of chemicals listed pointing to the right orange pages that are going to give us the details on how to respond.
That's a pretty sweet cheat sheet.
It's way neat.
Do you have one of those in your car usually?
Usually, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I always have that on my phone too. But I like the hard copy because you can share that easier. Mm-hmm. As soon as I add my phone to somebody, it goes to another page. You know, I don't know where it goes, but it goes somewhere else. But nonetheless, we have the information, and we could share that with a official responder if we wanted to, if they didn't happen to have it. Now, we could look, and we could see that in 2008, 2012, 2016, and now 2020, in the official write-up on sulfuric acid, we haven't learned much. Pretty much, it's the same. We knew then how to handle it. We knew what the danger was. Don't get it on your skin. It's probably not going to start on fire. It might react bad with water, but so it says, you know, don't put water directly in it because it might spark up for us. It might bubble up and pop up on us. But notice that they took water and they doused the truck driver with water. Right, took his shirt off, and then they got water on him. Now what we're doing there, neutralizing is one. The other thing that we are doing, just put this in your brain, park this in your brain. This is an important response, a knee-jerk, a gut response we want to have. When there is a dangerous chemical, our safest way to safety is to dilute it. Dilute, 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 dilute. If it's a liquid, find what liquid you can dilute it with. Most we can dilute with water, but not all. So find out if it's one you can dilute with water, which is most, and then just water the heck out of it. And just keep watering. Just dilute, 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 as long as our runoff from the water is not going to the Virgin River, right? So we may have to contain the water, which is okay, do it in a barrel, whatever. But that's what we do to the emergency responders when they come out with their moon suit on. They take the moon suit off, they stand under a shower. They're diluting whatever was on them. You're trying to wash some off, yes, but if you got some drops still left, you're diluting those drops. So to make it half strength, the quarter strength, the 10% strength, you get it down to the point where when you get alcohol down to 3.2, you just got Utah beer. It's not going to do a thing. It's diluted down to the point it's of no value, or it's of no danger, if you would. That's not true about Utah beer. I'm not saying that for sure. But the dilution concept is, if you dilute it, you get less drunk. That's the whole point of Utah law, is dilute it so you get less drunk. And we're on to it, so we, pretty much. But dilution, if we don't have a liquid, if we have a gas, it's the same kind of thing. Find out what gas can we mix with it without making it worse. Most of the time we can mix air. Air has a fuel in it, it's got oxygen. So in some cases, blowing air on a fire makes it worse. We call that a blast furnace. We call that a bellows pushing the blacksmith's, forge. right? Taking a campfire and making a forge out of it where it's burning a lot hotter. We can, make it worse. But what the purpose of air a lot of times is diluting. So taking a dangerous concentration of a gas and diluting it down to the point where it's not going to hurt anybody. And the dilution is an emergency responder's secret friend. We just have to safely dilute. We almost always are going to have a liquid or a gas, and most of the time we can mix water or air, but not all the time. So we verify if we can, and we're going to go to dilute to make it safer for everybody if we possibly can. So we're going to familiarize ourselves with the book. We are, even though we don't have it directly in front of us at the moment, we've passed it around and we've taken a look at it. We have seen the three main sections in there: the yellow, the blue, the orange. Then there is at the end, there's a little bit of a green selection that is saved for the really nasty stuff. Green doesn't mean go. Green's just the code for the nasty stuff there. But there's white pages in the beginning and the end. And those white pages have some kind of cool information about what the placards are, what the shapes of signs are, what shapes of trucks are. So we can, we followed semi-trucks and we just called them a semi-truck. But we haven't looked necessarily at the trailer they're pulling and said, what kind of tanker is that? A pressurized tanker? We got tankers going through St. George that look all like imposing and maybe dangerous, and all they're doing is taking cream to the ice cream plant. They're full of milk. There's nothing bad about it at all. But I can identify most of the time by the shape of the tanker whether it's a pressurized tanker or a milk truck, and we'll be looking at that so that right away you can tell by the shape the kind of materials that it's hauling. And that might give us a level of potential danger, a heads up on that we would look at. There are some new sections every time a version comes out, and we'll look at a couple videos that demonstrate the new stuff. There were new things when 2008 came out. There were new things when 2012 and 16 came out. Usually they're not a lot. In this case, they had a lot more information on IEDs. We had sent more people to Iraq and Afghanistan, and we'd had more people die from, IEDs. And so IEDs were used in 9/11 in the United States, and we have a bomb threat in Washington County where we live right here about every other day. No idea that there's that many.
Fireworks or whatever, or who knows?
Just bomb threats. Where it's a suspect. Now, the threat is maybe the wrong word. They're not necessarily all threats that I've put this here and I'm going to kill you. Mm-hmm. That's a threat. But when somebody sees a unidentified backpack at the airport, that is a bomb threat. We don't know where it came from, who left it there, and we don't know what's in it. We can't just go pick it up. We have to call Jason Whipple and his team, and they will dispatch our trained bomb squad personnel to go check it out. And it's that kind of thing. We get about one of those every other day or every third day in St. George. And some of them are not empty threats. They're actual explosive devices. And they keep quiet about that. There's a lot of it's kids and pranks and even college kids. There's a wide assortment of things that they've found. And Jason's office actually used to be in this building. It was down the hallway here. And while he was here, it was cool to be able to talk to him all the time because he knew what was going on. And they did drills here, and they've got the robots. They've got two of them that they can send out to check out a bomb. And they've got rifles and pistols on them, and shotgun maybe on one of them. And so they can attack and they can investigate without risking human life as much. it's still dangerous. We list in here some 6 common TIH gases. TIH, you need to know that initial stands for toxic inhalation hazard. So everything that we breathe isn't bad for us. It might smell funny, but or smell my finger, it's probably not going to hurt you. You're going to just giggle and laugh and go, no, I'm not going to do that. But it's probably not a toxic inhalation hazard. But there are things that are. And we saw in confined space video last class, 2 breaths and you pass out on some of them. They're nasty, nasty gases. And so those, we need to know what they are and what is likely to produce them if we're living in the world of emergency response. And so we want to have that. And if you don't memorize it, you just know what page it's on. That version of 212, it's on page 352 to 355. You can earmark those pages and flip to them right away and know what you needed to know. There are some other sections that are in there on what you need to have in terms of shipping documents, how they're typically organized. That's right inside the front cover, so you can kind of see the way we classify hazards. We have changed them from time to time. The coding system has merged. We've had military coding, Department of Transportation coding, and fire department coding, and they use different levels of hazard. Some use letters, some use numbers, some use colors, and some use shapes. And so all of those things have led to confusion as to what is the hazard. And slowly over time, the world has been harmonizing that. We call it global harmonization. We're trying to get the pictograms the same so that the picture tells 1,000 stories no matter what language you speak. You look at the picture and say, that's nuclear reactive radiation. And so I know what that is, whether that word is in my language. I know what the danger is. It's gamma radiation, and that's not okay. And so I have a symbol for that is now being required to put on anything that has that hazard on it so that we can see the picture and learn, and we are merging the hazard classifications together. Oh, there's a railroad. The Department of Transportation spins out separately the rail and the highway system. Have some overlap and some difference in their numbering system and their hazard classification system. And so we are trying to get those more glued together. We also have way more pipelines buried than you and I would think. It's common for us to see signs that say underground pipeline. It's not common for us to see the maps, but there are maps, and you can Google them and look them up, and you can see, by area, you can pull up Washington County, and you can see all of the underground pipelines that are going through here and what they contain. We've got underground pipelines that pipe crude oil. We have a pipeline that ran as far as Richfield from Salt Lake refineries up there in North Salt Lake, and to utilize the pipeline for a long time. This was why diesel fuel is expensive in Utah. They piped it from the refinery down to Richfield to use the pipeline, and then put it into trucks and hauled it back to Salt Lake City to deliver. It's like, wait, did you just do that? Is that what I think you did? Yeah, well, because we raised the bond and tax money built the pipeline, and so we got to use the pipeline. Really? We got idiots in office, But that's a true story, and that is I don't know what the current status of that is at the moment, but we have lots of underground pipelines. One of them starts breaking or leaking because somebody hits it with a backhoe on your neighbor's company's parking lot. We've got an emergency response scenario. Situation. We got natural gas coming out of there, or crude oil, or who knows what that we hit that's in that underground pipeline, and so we need to respond to that as well. And so the guide is going to have some information in there for us about that. A couple of introductions to the guide, I think, are in order. This is one put together by the Petrochemical Response Agency. pretty sure it's going to go. Yeah, there we go.
Each day within the United States, there are over 1.2 million shipments of hazardous materials, or hazmat. A wide variety of flammables, corrosives, and toxic materials are packaged and transported by tank trucks, rail cars, aircraft, and container vessels. Hazardous materials account for over 28% of all freight tonnage shipped on our waterways each year. And there's over 2.3 million miles of gas and liquid pipeline that wind through our metropolitan, urban, and rural settings. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, every year, over 3.1 billion tons of hazmat shipments travel through densely populated areas of our nation and through your jurisdictions. Most shipments arrive at their final destination safely and without incident. But incidents will occur, and the time and place will be as unknown to you as the type of transport vehicle involved and the properties of the hazardous material it'll be transporting. Your safe and swift corrective actions can limit or prevent harm to people, property, the environment, and yourself. Failure to respond correctly could be catastrophic.
The Emergency Response Guidebook, or ERG, is your key resource for guidance to the safest approach and response in the initial phase of an incident where every minute can influence the outcome. This video presentation is for responders who are either unfamiliar with the ERG or are looking to learn more about the basics of using the guidebook. The video instruction will familiarize you with the contents of the ERG as well as how to navigate its pages. It's important to note that viewing this DVD is not a substitute for personal, hands-on learning that will enable you to become proficient at accessing what you will need in an emergency. The ERG will help you interpret information about an unknown material, its potential behavior, and the appropriate actions to take in an emergency. It is your responsibility as a first responder to protect yourself and the public during the initial phase of an incident. Your knowledge of the guidebook before going into a hazmat incident can save lives. The Department of Transportation is responsible for the safe and secure transportation of hazardous materials. The ERG encapsulates all the hazard identification communication links that are required by law. It is the responsibility of the manufacturers, shippers, and transporters to use a system of labels, placards, markings, and shipping papers on all materials and transport vehicles. OSHA standards provide that the first line of hazard communication and responsibility begins with the producer of the product. All manufacturers must communicate the hazards of the product they create. Most often, this information comes in the form of a materials safety data sheet. The manufacturer is obligated to ensure the safe management of the product for the duration of its existence, from cradle to grave. The shipper of the product is required to provide a shipping document based on Department of Transportation standards, an emergency response telephone number that is monitored at all times the hazardous material is in transportation, a hazard class or division number, a 4-digit ID number, and a shipping name. And finally, the transporter is the steward for the safe movement of the material. They're required to provide you with the proper shipping paper, as well as to ensure that the transport vehicle displays the accurate placard for hazardous material. In some cases involving international intermodal containers, an orange panel for material identification may be present, with or without a placard. Your correct usage of the ERG is the final, most vital link in this interdependent framework. Before we discuss how the ERG is organized, let's give some context to the use of the ERG. Let's talk about some real possibilities that exist for you when approaching an unknown hazardous materials scene. In Ludwig Benner's General Hazardous Materials Behavior Model, a container of material is stressed in 3 ways: thermally, mechanically, or chemically. When stressed, it most likely will breach and release its contents, engulfing anything in its pathway. Never underestimate the possibilities when dealing with chemical reactions. In this instance, the letter P next to the guide number would have informed you that the product may polymerize if subjected to high heat or if contaminated. According to Benner's model, risk assessment must begin at a distance. When arriving at a hazmat incident, your first responsibility is to keep yourself and the public safe. Resist rushing in. Position yourself upwind, uphill, or upstream from the hazard, and stay clear of all vapors, fumes, smoke, and spills.
On the day when you're called to the next hazardous material accident, the goal is that you're ready. Understanding the content and the organization layout of the ERG is where we'll begin. All the information you need on how and when to use the Emergency Response Guidebook can be found in the opening white pages. Anytime you look up a hazardous material in the ERG, you'll begin with either the yellow or blue pages. Those pages will guide you directly to the center of the book where the orange guides are located. The orange section is ultimately where you want to end up in the ERG. It contains the information you need in order to respond. If you find the 4-digit ID number first, from the placard or from the shipping document, then you'll go to the yellow pages and look up that number numerically. The orange guide number will be in the column beside it. In this case, guide 128 will give you the information that you need. If you find the name of the material first, which can be found on package markings or on the shipping paper, then you'll go to the blue pages and look up that name alphabetically.
That's a good idea.
And again, we see that it leads us to Orange Guide 128. It's important to read the full name of the material. For example, if you were to look up arsenic, you'd need to know whether it's arsenic bromide, arsenic chloride, or another arsenic variation. This will keep you from going to the incorrect guide. The orange guides are the core of the Emergency Response Guidebook. In the orange guides, you'll find 3 major areas: potential hazards, public safety, and emergency response. Each guide is for a group of materials with similar chemical and toxicological characteristics. The key to using the ERG is applying the data points we'll be discussing to get you to this orange section. Once you have the proper guide for the material you're confronted with, then you'll have corrective actions to put into effect until qualified personnel can arrive and assist you.
In the crucial moments when the identification of the material is completely unknown, you could be the only responder on a scene for an extended period of time. You will need to use any and all available visual identification clues to safely approach the scene. Again, risk assessment must begin at a distance. In the very best case scenario, upon arriving on an incident, you will have the shipping paper available to you with the necessary pieces of information you need to react immediately and decisively. Most often, there will be only parts of information available depending upon the nature of the incident. The appearance of colored smoke, a vapor cloud, or people who collapse with no apparent cause may be your very first clue to the presence of hazardous materials. The shape of the container can be another clue visible at long range to indicate a vehicle carrying hazardous materials. As a last resort, you could use the road and rail car information chart in the white pages. As you get closer, you may be able to see only the color of a placard or other markings on the vehicle. So in cases where you can advance no further, you can still locate an orange guide for response instructions, even if you only have the vehicle shape or the color of the placard. Each advance towards the scene will add critical data points that will take you from an unknown situation towards an orange guide, which leads you to safety and corrective actions instructions.
The more thoroughly you understand how to use the Emergency Response Guidebook, the more you can significantly influence the successful outcome of an event. Your ability to assess the situation, identify the hazards, secure the scene, and begin using the ERG to inform your corrective action decisions after placing a call for assistance is imperative. If you see a placard with no words, there'll be a hazard class number at the bottom. Reference the placards page and then go to the corresponding orange guide for instructions. For a complete listing of hazard classes, see page 14 in the white pages. You may also occasionally see a double orange panel. The top is used on some intermodal bulk containers and is referred to as the hazard identification code, and below that is your 4-digit identification number. In a rescue situation, you must always weigh and measure risks before acting. Whenever possible, use binoculars to survey the hazard. The ERG will be your tool to assess those risks before rushing into a scene. The Emergency Response Guidebook is a guidance resource to approach and secure the incident safely, identify the level of hazard, and obtain help by calling in the incident according to your agency's protocols. In the absence of any information, placards, shipping papers, or container markings, you can always go to Guide 111, the very first guide in the orange pages. And only as a last resort, use the road and rail car information. When provided with a shipping paper from a transporter, find the product name and proceed to the blue pages in order to get to the orange guide. Remember, any knowledge the transporter may have could prove to be extremely helpful and save time. Throughout the blue and yellow pages, you'll notice many highlighted entries. These highlighted materials indicate that it's a toxic inhalation hazard, or a TIH. Once you realize you're dealing with a TIH material, the green pages will provide you with an annex to the table of initial isolation and protective action distances. When identifying the appropriate isolation zone for the nature of the TIH material you've encountered, pay close attention to notations regarding variables that influence the situation, whether it's day or night, the difference between a large or small spill, and wind direction. Also in the green pages, you'll find Table 2, which lists materials that produce TIH gases when spilled in water. The ramifications of quantity will greatly affect the isolation and evacuation distance guidance. Be aware that vapors may be channeled in valleys or buildings. Note also that all distances are given in meters, feet, kilometers, and miles. You should also be aware that in every orange guide, under the public safety heading, you'll find isolation and evacuation distances that correspond to that specific material. Know that the presence of fire in an incident involving a TIH material will possibly make toxicity factors a lower priority than fire or explosion potential. Pages 24 and 25 in the white pages cover products transported through pipelines. Pipelines are often buried. When this is the case, there are above-ground structures and signs indicating the presence of underground pipelines. Liquid pipelines carry crude oil, gasoline, diesel fuel, and jet fuel. Surface indicators of a liquid pipeline leak include liquids bubbling from the ground, oil slick on flowing or standing water, flames that appear to be coming from the ground, and vapor clouds. Gas pipelines carry natural gas. Surface indicators of a gas pipeline leak include a hissing, roaring, or blowing sound, dirt or water being blown in the air, continuous bubbling in wet or flooded areas, flames that appear to be coming from the ground, dead or brown vegetation in an otherwise green field, and, in winter, melted snow over the pipeline. These pages are your guide to responding correctly and safely. The notification sequence and requests for technical information beyond what's available in this guidebook should occur in the following order. Notify your dispatcher. If that's not an option, then locate and call the telephone number listed on the shipping paper. If you can't obtain the shipping paper, then contact the appropriate emergency response organization listed on the inside back cover of the guidebook. Keep in mind also that the white pages in the back provide additional resource information on protective clothing, fire and spill control, criminal terrorist use, chemical, biological, and radiological agents, a glossary of terminology where you can find definitions to names like previously mentioned polymerization, and finally, on the back inside cover, the emergency response telephone number listing.
Let's review. Resist rushing in. Position yourself upwind, uphill, or upstream from the hazard, and stay clear of all vapors, fumes, smoke, and spills. When arriving at the scene of an incident, you are expected to recognize the presence of hazardous materials. Any efforts made to rescue persons, property, or the environment must be weighed against the possibility that you could become part of the problem. Without entering the immediate hazard area, isolate and secure the area, protect yourself and the public, and above all, do not walk into or touch spilled material. Call for the assistance of trained personnel as soon as conditions permit. Previously, we've referenced Guide 111 when you're unable to discern a starting point. A major exception to this is when you suspect or know that explosives are involved. In those cases, immediately reference Guide 112. If an ID number or name of material cannot be found, but a placard is in sight, find the table of placards in the front white pages, match the placard, and use the guide number indicated. Then go to that orange guide and read the response instructions carefully.
If you find the shipping paper first, you'll locate the name of the product in the appropriate area. The blue pages are alphabetical by product name. Directly beside the name will be your orange guide number. If the placard is visible and you can locate the ID number in the center, then go to the numerical listing in the yellow pages. Reference the appropriate orange guide number that the material has highlighted. The orange guide and green pages will inform you on protective actions due to the TIH hazard. In the case of a double orange panel, remember that the top number is the hazard identification code, which identifies the hazard class of the material, and the bottom number is your 4-digit identification number. When a single orange panel is present, it will contain the 4-digit identification number. The Emergency Response Guidebook is designed for you, the emergency responder. It's one of your most powerful resources to protect and save lives when called to an event involving hazardous materials. How you react in the first few minutes of an incident can set the stage for the entire outcome of the event, including the risk factors to yourself, the victims who need your aid, and the surrounding public. If used effectively, the ERG will help you quickly interpret the hazard information and give you corrective action steps to influence a successful outcome. Fortunately, our nation has a hazard communication framework designed to support you when you're the first to arrive on a hazmat incident. By understanding the system of placards, labels, and shipping papers, and their role in the Emergency Response Guidebook, you can make a successful outcome a reality.
Okay, so that is a kind of an introduction of the 2008 book. Looking a little more carefully at some of the issues, we'll go a little bit through a few more slides before we go on our break, but we'll take a break in a few moments. It refers to the table of placards. And if we can't read a number, we can go by a grouping of information that are going to be reflected by similar types of placards. And so this page, page 6 of one of the versions, it's up at the front in the white pages, and you'll see the guide number in the circle by a cluster of signs that are a similar shape, design, or color. So we predominantly have red, orange, white, blue, yellow, green. I guess there's some black and white ones as well. But there's a lot of information that is reflected on that diamond-shaped placard. Sometimes there's a number, sometimes there's a symbol, sometimes there are words. And all of those are designed to give us safety information about what could be represented by the chemicals inside that transport vehicle. We have rail car and road trailer identification charts that are here also that reference a shape. And if you hadn't thought about it before, you maybe haven't noticed that all those shapes are there. But when we look, these are all trailers on semi-trucks. You've got this tube with a dome on the end of it. That dome is designed for optimum pressure. So you can see this is called a high-pressure tank. There are tanks that have these ribbings, all reinforcement ribbings around them. That's a corrosive liquid. Those usually multiple levels of metals. We have tank trailers that have a box at the back end of it. Now that box at the back end of it is going to have manifolds and pumps and things inside a cabinet. When you look at that from the back, it looks like that. When you look at this from the back, you can see the two layers that might be there. It's a thicker wall. You look at that one, non-pressure liquid tank, that'd be milk and cream, gasoline. Look, it's kind of egg-shaped from behind. Whereas these are round from behind. This is round from behind. Some of them have multiple ports. Boom, 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 boom. But they can be filled, so they're separated in compartments. On the top, we have tube trailers where that's normally helium and argon, or what we see in tube trailers more than anything else around here. But I think it was when I first saw the ERG a long time ago that it dawned on me that, yeah, I've been looking at all those shapes of trailers and never even thought about it. I've been following them right down the road, and it's just a trailer. Instead of, there's a reason it's shaped that way. And that is a tip as to what's inside of it, probably. And some of those, like those belly dumps, these dry bulk cargo trailers, we see Barney Transportation in town. Barney Transportation, that's most of what they haul out of the gypsum mines here in the industrial park. They haul those down to Las Vegas, to those two gypsum plants that are on the right before you get to Vegas, off of I-15 there. We see those trucks going back and forth, empty coming back, full going that way, out of St. George all the time. You pass them 100 times yourself. But that's not always gypsum in there. It's a dry bulk. It could be fertilizer. We have a lot of, in other parts of the country, we have fertilizer plants that haul stuff there in those types of trailers. Lime, cement for an ingredient for the batch plants is transported in tanks like that. And this stuff sometimes catches on fire here. There's two places you can look in your travels that you can see a place where a tank trailer full of something wiped out, had an accident, caught on fire, and in both of the cases that I'm thinking of, it cost the life of the driver, and we had to rebuild the road. And one of them is when you go out to Highway 16 going to Hurricane, you get off at I-15, you go down into Purgatory Valley there where the county facilities are, the fairgrounds and the prison, the sheriff's department. And as you're coming back out of that, the low point in that Purgatory Valley is the Virgin River, goes through there. There's a bridge that crosses the river. Immediately, it's a curve. Speed limit slows down to 50 in that spot. There's a flashing light. Just before the flashing light, look on the left side if you're headed to Hurricane. A fuel truck was coming around that corner, semi, had an accident, and took out the bridge panel and both lanes of traffic going towards St. George. And if you look, and that was some years ago. I remember when it happened, but I don't remember what year it was. But they had to completely rebuild that road there and that bridge spot there because of the heat of the fire, and you can tell the new asphalt versus the old asphalt. If you know that was an accident that happened there, you can see it today. When you drive that next time, look at the condition of the road, and where there's the newer road, that was taken out from a hazmat response. The other one that I can think of is coming up from Mesquite to here, coming up the Virgin River at Bridge 8. It's at about the 21 mile marker maybe on the gorge. When you're coming this way towards St. George, the bridges are narrow, and if a truck messes up at all, they hit the bridge, and a lot of them are on curves, and this one is on a curve. A truck came around the curve too fast and hit the wall, dangled halfway over, broke the wall out at the bridge, went halfway over and blew up, caught on fire. And you can see that traces. That's more recently that happened. You can see the traces of that fire on the concrete on I-15 there, and you can see the bridge repair where they've done the bridge repair of the railing on the side to that side when you're coming up the hill to the right. And I don't know directions in there because it's curving. I'm never for which direction we're going, but coming towards St. George on the right-hand side. And so, and those are tragic accidents. But emergency responders had to respond because you got all kinds of things. And one of the accidents that happened in the gorge, I recall, was gurney trucking. They had a truck jumped up on the concrete K-member and rode it like a rail slide on a skateboard and rolled it for a long time, and it had 400 hogs on board. And it was like a can opener. It just opened that truck up, and pigs went everywhere, and there were more vehicles involved besides just the truck. But you wouldn't think that being a hazardous response, but all the diesel fuel was spilled, and all the pigs were spilled. And then it was a problem. What do you do? Emergency responders had hogs going, blocking traffic and causing more accidents, some injured, some not. A decision had to be made. Do you try to catch them? Do you kill them? What do you do? And their decision was they euthanized all those pigs at the site of the accident, rather than try to get in with medical.
Kill them?
I'm sorry?
Euthanize is
Yeah, they killed them. Yeah, and I'm not sure all the methods that they use. When a veterinarian euthanize, they use, carbon monoxide or more often sodium pentothal, and that kills the animal pretty quickly. Like we do in the for execution of humans, the same kind of thing. But I think in a road accident like that was at night. I suspect they shot a fair number of those animals that were injured, and it was maybe going to have a slow, painful death. So they quickened it. Whether you like that or not, it's one of the realities of emergency response. You have to decide what do you do. There's a scared animal is dangerous to humans.
You can't have it running around traffic.
You can't. No, you just can't.
You catch them.
Your kids are in the cars, and it's a bad scenario no matter how you go at it. But the point is, they happen, and those aren't far away. Those are right here, and we could be the first responders on incidents like that. The more knowledge we've packed in our head, the more value we are to the community, and of course to our company as well if we're doing that. All right, we've walked through here. It's 4:42. I think we ought to take a break right now, and we'll come back and watch a few more videos and dig a little bit deeper into the guide and set the stage for what we're going to do next. So I'll see you in about 10 minutes.